Amazing Plantz4mationz. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited to have a guest with us today. As you know, I've been talking about it all weekend on the live or on the Facebook page and the group and everything. But I would like to welcome, and if I mispronounce your name of it in any way, just let me know, Alaina Sigler. She has been actively involved in the animal freedom movement, engaging in diverse efforts to lessen harm and suffering for various species. In 2022, her journey led her to become an ordained interspecies and interfaith animal chaplain with the Compassion Consortium. She instructs mindfulness techniques, advocates for exploited beings, and supports activists and non activists to guide them in forging a profound connection with their emotions and empowering individuals to navigate daily life confidently. Alaina holds a Vegan Permaculture Design certificate, how cool, and offers a holistic vision of healing for humans, more than human animals and the environment. She joyfully offers Animal Reiki at a farmed animal sanctuary with humans and more than human individuals. That is so awesome. Thank you. Whoops. I appreciate you being here. Welcome, Alaina.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here with you today and to go into some meaningful discussion.
That is awesome. I told you there's my cat right on cue. I told you she would want a treat as soon as we started. Um, Speaking of animals, it's like she heard me talking about them, right? Did you hear? So, can you just tell us a little bit? I'd like to get started with these about how you kind of were introduced to maybe veganism. Was it through diet, or did you start out with animal activism? Like, how did all this begin for you?
Yeah, my journey began about a decade ago. Actually, this past June,
Nice.
2024, this year, is when I became vegan. And I was inspired to transition from mostly vegetarianism after 6 years, learning more about the impacts on the environment, frankly. And by that point, I'd been eating very little dairy products and eggs. And there were some instances where I wasn't looking at ingredients too carefully. And when I moved to Colorado, to the Denver area from Columbus, I realized I really needed a community to help ground me in this effort because I didn't have that in Ohio. And I wasn't doing activism at the time either. And so, back in college, a friend originally introduced me to vegetarianism. She was vegetarian at the time. She told me what happens to baby male chicks and how they're ground alive. We were sitting in, a cafeteria. I think I was eating eggs at the time. I'll never forget that. And I just was shocked.
Yeah.
Just completely shocked, had no idea. And, from that point on, after moving out to Denver, I was introduced to a wonderful group that was actively doing fur demonstrations at a couple fur stores in one of the neighborhoods in the Denver area. I started doing vegan outreach, leafleting. Um, it continued on from there. And so all these demonstrations, led me to where I am today. And it's just been an incredible journey.
That is amazing. I forgot about our little veggie background there. Just put it up.
Yeah.
I think that was, I wanted to touch on something that you said, or two things. I think it's so important to have community, but previous to that, I think we were all at some point shocked. I know I was, to find out, like, you always think, like, oh, eggs and milk, like, especially in the beginning, you're like, what is the point of not eating those when, it's not, we think it's not hurting the animals, but it's all like this wake up call when we find out. And if anyone's watching this and just hearing about it, I'm so sorry, because you can't unhear it once you hear that, like, baby chicks, what happens to the males. And then also, like, with this, just the whole industry of the way that cows are over milked, and it's just the artificial insemination, just everything is terrible with it. And it's like, I'm glad that we were all awakened to that and spreading the word. So
Mhm.
but community like really is important too. So I thank you for identifying that too.
No, you're right on the point. Yeah, community is what kept me going, all these years. I had folks I could go back to, a place where I finally felt like I belonged. And I think that's a critical piece that a lot of individuals miss, if they once were vegetarian or once were vegan, or they start engaging in activism, any combination of those shifts in our lives,
Yeah.
having folks who we can go back to and intrinsically just understand, why we're doing what we're doing. And I think as a whole in society at large, um, we're missing a lot of empathy,
Hmm.
seeing that empathy, and that's why we come back to being in community, to really get that understanding that otherwise isn't there. And so, yeah, I've had the honor and joy of being involved in numerous online and in person local advocacy groups over the years, and yeah, I have so much to be grateful for all the folks who have been in my lives and been in my life in one way or another. So
That's amazing. I think that we live, unfortunately, we're on our way there, but we live in a non-vegan world, and it's so easy for people. Like, we don't have those like-minded individuals around you, and I have only online. So it's very cool that you created that sense of community locally too. So you actually have like in-person experiences with people.
definitely, there's a lot to be said to having a place to go,
Hmm.
folks who want to act in the same way that you do act,
Hmm.
with the values that we all share. And I think that's what, can bring me back to understanding for individuals who aren't vegan or vegetarian, and, individuals who aren't activists, is coming back to all these shared values we have. And that's where, the compassion really extends um, beyond, because deep down, there's these beautiful stories of love for animals
Yeah.
that countless people have. And sometimes we just suppress a little bit of what's really going on. And we don't want to necessarily bring up those troubling emotions when it comes to facing how we have interacted with animals, or the products that are there in front of us on our plate. And so giving that space lovingly, I believe, is really crucial to expanding, really what shifts we can make to lessen suffering. So,
I think that is really important. That I think that people see this like divide between um, people who are vegan and then like non-vegan, and I think that we have like way more in common. I know I have way more in common with my previous non-vegan self than I have differences now. It's just I've expanded on that compassion. I think, like you said, we can compartmentalize. This is my animal, this is my pet, I take care of this animal, it's my animal companion. And then I look at this as a friend, as a part of my family, and then we kind of excuse, willingly or unwillingly, or unknowingly rather, we just excuse other suffering, if it's not directly related. So it's an interesting concept, and I appreciate you delving into that and helping people expand their own compassion too.
mhm. Well, just like you said, in regards to animals who share our homes with us, um, there's so many stories we can use to connect
Mhm.
and help bridge understanding for other species. I would never want this to happen to, this cat individual who I love very dearly.
Mm-hmm.
And so those stories can be very powerful when they don't have shame or judgment attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
And we can open up and share that vulnerability with others. I think it really can be transformative. So yeah, exactly. We keep moving and keep going in the direction of compassion. And yeah, there's nothing better than that.
Absolutely. And I love the without shame because, we don't want to, like, we all had these same shifts in our mindset, that have happened, and they happen slowly. Sometimes it happens overnight for some people. Sometimes it might take a couple of times seeing something here and there. And then, some of people, like I did, came into it through diet and saying, hey, this is pretty cool. These people are eating these raw fruits and vegetables and losing weight and healing. And I'm like, I think I want to try this. And that was when I got into communities and then started discovering like truly what veganism is, even though I was saying, oh, I'm vegan. It wasn't until later on that I really understood the full, like what that meant, the compassion in it for animals. So like, when did you start to, like when you talk about interspecies, can you just explain that to people, like what that is, like what your certifications are in that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, as a animal chaplain, I look to hold space for all species. I don't have boundaries as to, who I will do my best to support, and that might be, oh gosh, everyone from the tiniest ant. I try and be very conscious to not step on ants, to, holding space in someone's home during an animal Reiki session. Reiki essentially meaning loving energy, universal energy, and that's enacted through meditation. Oftentimes, in my position, I am asked to hold space for those who are grieving the loss of an animal in their home. I have also had the honor of facilitating celebrations of life at Love and Arms Animal Sanctuary, just north of where I live here in Denver. And it's been a beautiful, beautiful journey. But the discrimination of species isn't present in my work, and that's why I hold interspecies very close to what I do. I'm continuing to contemplate how I can continue to expand my compassion for more and more beings and lessening suffering. And so that takes a lot of very intentional time and reflection and making sure that I'm continuing to act on it and to hold myself accountable. So
I thank you, and thank you, Mona, for joining. I knew who you meant, Risa. Thank you for joining. We appreciate it. Welcome, Mona, to the comments. And I like really think over time that's expanded for me. That like at first it was like I had compassion, like you said, I started making connections between, pigs and cows and our normal, animals. And then like I started really realizing like our sea life, how we exploit them so easily in pictures and things. People are holding the fish, and like before it would have meant nothing to me to scroll past something like that. And now I think your perspective, that one little shift can change, and it's like we don't realize the suffering, and then like all the way down to insects, and each little thing has its own life. No matter what species it is, it's important to that species. And like it is so easy to ignore it in some people's eyes. I think just because, like you said, we don't want to feel that compassion, and I mean feel that hurt that we all have to have, and realize that we have to make a change in our own maybe lifestyle, cultural. Like it's not always the convenient, choice, because of how the world has already been, I guess, organized, or how we've grown as a society to exploit animals in so many ways without even realizing it.
Mhm.
So I appreciate you bringing attention to each, species like that, and helping everyone understand that. And is that what do people come to you for the, like, do you work? I know you sent us the picture of you on there with was it was oh man, I forgot his name.
Tito.
Tito, yes.
Tito the cow, yeah.
It's funny because I was like, look at that. Like, and when we think of Animal Chaplain, maybe we were thinking of someone for our companions in our homes. But that is so awesome that you worked with. And what's the story with Tito?
Tito came to Love and Arms Animal Sanctuary just as a baby, and he arrived quite a few years ago. Um, Someone who is going to be taking him to a veal farm had a change of heart. And so he was only about perhaps 60 pounds or so. He was
Oh,
kind of like a puppy, maybe more like 100 pounds when he was um, arriving at Love and Arms. And so we learned about this calf, and he became the first cow to have sanctuary at Love and Arms. And he's held such love towards everyone ever since he arrived. And he was bottle fed, and he would cuddle, and he just really took to the loving energy at the sanctuary. And
oh,
he's grown so beautifully, and he has a herd who he loves so very much. And so yeah, his story and that of many other residents continue to inspire me. The lessons that the residents and animals in general, whether they be in my home or in my backyard
uh-huh.
or at Love and Arms, continue to inspire me. Um,
And for those that don't know about like what a sanctuary is, can you just mention it for those new vegans that might be watching, or people that are just interested in the topic? It's basically, I know you said this person had a change of heart. Is it just a culmination of animals that were, in these situations where they were going to or be slaughtered, or they just don't have a home?
yeah, many of the animals who have arrived at Love and Arms and other farmed animal sanctuaries across the country, around the world, if they are headed to a farmed animal sanctuary, a high majority are bound to be slaughtered. Other individuals come from rescue cases, whether it's the ASPCA. There have been cases where farmed animals are found abandoned in backyards. There are neglect cases. Folks, um, oftentimes will contact farmed animal sanctuaries
Uh-huh.
and want to drop off animals who they didn't intend to breed, or they themselves forced to breed.
Uh-huh.
And then they realize, I can't, don't want to care for them for whatever reason. And so almost every instance is a situation of abuse and neglect. And that is why, sanctuary as a place of refuge elicits so much freedom. And we can continue to cultivate that freedom in so many wonderful ways, um, physically, emotionally, mentally, and I would also add spiritually. Farmed animal sanctuaries can really hold um, such love, such love. And then the residents, even if they don't want to be touched, and that's a common thing that happens at sanctuaries is
Yeah.
let's go and let's touch someone. Because the first time that I went to Love and Arms, I was in shock. This is a place where farmed animals are rescued, and my experience was only going to petting zoos as a kid or
Mhm.
going to farms. And then all the pieces weren't quite there with what was going to happen. I just thought they were going to live out their lives there. Because that information is very, very much hidden from children. I think more so today, they're starting to fill in the gaps, um, where the food comes from, but not how,
Mhm.
especially with young children. The how is usually pushed to the side. And I think it's up to each adult and how they want to share that information. I think it's, um, needs to be carefully considered
Mhm.
as to how that information will come across. But yeah, when I first went, I knew it was a place where I could find what I've been needing.
Mhm.
And eventually that missing link of I'm doing this for them, of course. I need to be here, to be present,
Mhm.
to care, to provide care for these individuals. And so for anyone who hasn't visited a farmed animal sanctuary, if you have one locally, um, I highly recommend visiting if you can. And oftentimes there will be online events where you can attend. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Like, and I think, like you said, to see that, it might not even shift someone right away, but it starts to make that connection, when you actually see animals of a different species and how, like, one of the things that, like, sometimes they'll come across right on cue, right? Every time I say animals, I think an animal's going to speak in one of our homes.
Yeah.
The cool thing about it is the way that animals act so similarly. Like, I mean, I'll see these videos of like the cows running around playing on Instagram, and like, and they act like a dog. If you've ever been around a dog, they have those similar patterns, like how no matter how big a cat is, all the way up to a lion, you can get similarities in how your cat might act, or, do the little marking of territory. And like, just anything, any animal that you look at, even down to an insect, has these little, things that you just start to realize, that yeah, it's a life, like we just it's amazing what's happened to me only in this last like 6 years, almost 6 years. This whole way that I had of thinking all the way from 42 years is different. Like, I'm such a different perspective on the world, and it's, sometimes it's a joyful experience, and then other times it can be a sad experience. And that's probably where you bring people from, because it's like you just want everyone to get it. Like, please make this connection. We have voiceless animals that we're trying to save, and I think that's where all the like emotion and compassion, like emotion, comes from. When people are arguing amongst each other, there are people who are, saying, oh, don't worry about it, don't tell me how to think. And then there's people that are, have been the sanctuaries and have had this experience and this profound connection, and it's about something other than them. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done to bridge the gap to that understanding, and to not fight amongst each other, especially within, those of us who are vegan, and with our friends that are not yet vegan.
Yeah, that's spot on. I I have heard countless times, and it's such a wonder to hear how we can enable connections at farmed animal sanctuaries, because when we can connect, it means we're not distracted. It means we're present in the moment. It means we're noticing. We're noticing who is around us.
Mhm.
We're noticing their acts of joy and play and love for one another. And I think that is so critical. When we come to these wondrous spaces that have been created, like farmed animal sanctuaries, um, wild animal sanctuaries, I think of wildlife rehabilitation centers, all these rare, rare places that exist. They're not common. They're not common. And
Mhm.
so, taking all that in when we're there, we can really leave with some profound gifts. But it really, I think, matters as to how we approach these spaces. Are we coming in with perhaps some intentions that are discriminatory, for instance, that won't allow us to fully be present with that individual?
Mhm.
Setting aside notions about like pigs, for instance. If we have this idea that pigs are dirty, that pigs are gross, well, we have some preconceived ideas, we have some judgments. And when we're in these spaces, we can learn not only some fun facts about pigs. Well, yeah, they roll in the mud because they don't have sweat glands and they use the mud to cool down. It's that simple.
Right,
But we can use
right.
that information to shed aside biases that are sitting within us because, yeah, we live in, a carnal society and we're just holding on to what we've been told by the government, by corporations. And when we learn the truth and connect the truth with our eyes and feel and see that love in the moment, I think that's the big shift that we can start to make. But going in with an intention to shed aside preconceived ideas about farmed animals, I think is some work that can be done to allow folks to make those um, loving moments truly become present.
I think that's amazing. I wasn't even putting that together when we talk about biases. Like there are so many different things that we just inherently know from being raised a certain, in the society that we were all raised in, that like, yeah, like there's certain things, not like taking aside this animal's for food and this animal's to love, there's within those animals. Even that's a great point about the pigs, and thanks for sharing that, because I didn't know. I don't have the bias that they're dirty, but I have heard about them rolling in the mud, so I didn't know that's because they didn't have sweat glands. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and finding there's a reason for things within, these preconceived notions of, like, yeah, I mean, if we didn't have sweat glands, we may go around and have to do that too, right? Like, like we don't realize the things that we do. We could, well, we could put an air conditioner on because we have that luxury, I guess. But like when you're in the wild and you're an animal, they're doing things instinctively because of how they're built and how they're made. And they have emotions just like, us, no matter what animal it is, and I think that's so cool. I really want to visit a sanctuary. I've never been to one, and you definitely have me wanting. I've thought about it a few times, but especially after this conversation, I want to go and really be present with the animals. I think that would be cool, and I think it would be cool to share it
Mm-hmm.
with people, um, too, and bring people into that experience. And you mentioned something I wanted to touch on with, kids. I assume they visit the sanctuary, and what is it like? Like, what kind, like in your professional, opinion? Obviously, it's each adult's decision how they do it, but what would be a way to explain that to a child if they ask if it is food, or do we tell them these animals were going to become food? Like, how do you feel that would be the best way to do that?
That's a really interesting question. I'm glad you brought that up because, with younger kids, I'm thinking like preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, those younger ages, that love is just right there. They don't have those discriminations or biases
Mhm.
towards other species. I currently work as a kindergarten special education teacher
Oh,
part
nice.
time, and I had a student who um, mentioned his favorite animal is a chicken. Just pure innocence, no humor behind it. I've also worked with older ages, like middle school and high school, where they would say that, and it would essentially be
Yeah.
a joke. But at 5 years old, they genuinely have that love, and it's
Mhm.
just right there sitting inside them. And all we have to do is nurture that with stories, with opportunities to meet these individuals and to connect with them. And I would say, being very clear when we say we love a chicken, we love a hen, giving her that name,
Mhm.
giving her that moment. to have space with a child, but
Mhm.
also helping them realize, what are their needs,
Mhm.
what are the child's needs, and how do they mimic. And that simply can be through observation, pointing out the play, or really letting kids notice these. I wouldn't even say we have to point it out. Kids just pick up on it instantly.
Mhm.
And then they have such joy with, sharing these moments through drawings. Writing is becoming one that kids aren't too interested in doing, but when we can create really meaningful moments, writing just pours out. We're
That's
reading about them. I think there's so many avenues to elicit creativity and engagement. Um, the ways are just endless, frankly. And so as they continue to age, really thinking about what are their experiences with these individuals, what questions have they been asking, and really paying attention to what they're being told
Mhm.
at school, especially in the media, and finding a way to help them bridge perhaps some misconceptions with what the truth is. And
And
perhaps doing that in a gentle way, but knowing that someone does become a product, someone becomes a thing,
Mhm.
is something that they can see with their eyes. And maybe that doesn't mean we show them graphic imagery. It doesn't mean we're gonna, put on um, earthlings or anything of that nature. Perhaps when they're older and ready to see that type of footage and engage with it a bit more um, critically,
yeah.
helping them continue to know that when we share love with, the cat who shares our home with us, that love does not differ from the love that we share with this hen or this cow or this pig at a farmed animal sanctuary, or these fishes or these insects who are in our backyard, and extending that, at parks, um, on trails, wherever we may be, even if we live in a busy urban sprawl, there are always individuals present who we can notice, express gratitude for, learn their species name. For one, we need to start understanding who shares our neighborhood
Yeah.
beyond the human individuals, and paying them that respect, and understanding that, if we call someone a pest, what harm comes from those kinds of actions and that language.
Mhm.
So there's countless opportunities, really. Um, I'll stop there, but thank you. That was a great question.
Yeah, I love that. And because I think introducing, kids to, I think you're right. In the beginning, like we were all like that, I'm sure. Like I don't remember being so young and understanding that, but I've seen kids, they just have this natural, like especially this time of year. There's a image that goes around, or a short video, I guess it is, of a little girl who hugs the turkey, and the head goes down, the turkey's head goes on her shoulder like he's hugging her. And it's like,
Mhm.
previous to this, I know that there was like jokes that would pop up, like, hey, what's a vegan, or a turkey, what does a turkey love vegans, like it's a joke, but it's like, it's so, we don't connect that, like there's going to be millions of these birds on people's table, and this, like, people could have just seen an image of a turkey, or how we cartoon a turkey, in turkey day. It's just, it's really like, so, like, because that animal's not one that we have in our homes, and that we identify with. So I feel like if we could bring that to people and see that connection, and see how the animals that we think of as food are, really just individual animals that are the same. That's where I
Mhm.
think of the big connection came for me, when I just had that aha moment of, wow, there's why am I thinking there's a difference between these animals I've been eating and this one just because I don't see it,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
it's like I love your like ideas because like you said, you don't want to give someone something at an age they're not ready for, something that might hinder their, you know, growth or their compassion by seeing something too early like an earthlings or something. But you also want to kind of, I feel like as a parent, especially if you're a vegan parent, especially make it clear. But how do you do that when the world's telling the child something else? It's very, it's a difficult thing, it must be, you know, to navigate that. And I appreciate you helping bridge that gap. I just wanted to touch on Mona's comment here. As a woman, I never understood why women think it's okay to abuse female animals for their pleasure, but think differently about humans. Yeah, that's another connection that I made
Mhm.
later on too. It's so interesting. Identifying with ourself in the animal, not even other animals. That's true too, that we are, you know, just like animals or animals, I guess, if you really want to look at it.
Yeah, those boundaries, from my learnings and meditations, and I've come to see that we are all interconnected.
Mhm,
That really is one of the easiest way to put aside differences.
mhm,
No matter where we are on the planet or species, that interconnection is real.
mhm,
It's very real, and the idea of a human doesn't, hold much value. We can set aside speciesism when we can set aside the longing we have to identify as a human.
mhm,
So, yeah, so many wonderful avenues to continue to elicit compassion, I think, from kids, to come back to that. There's beautiful opportunities to connect it with love and care for our planet, for other human individuals. It's not just an end all kind of work
mhm.
with only farmed animals.
Yeah.
Those teachings can reach everyone, and really looking at how to engage so that we can, really work towards solutions for what it seems to be an endless list of problems that we experience in today's world. So,
What
so
like compassion for each other, I feel like, because sometimes I know that like when I shared with Dawn the Gary Yourofsky video and she cried, like immediately I knew that shift had happened within her about that what happens to animals, and that she had really made that connection. But I felt compassion for her for feel, you know, because sometimes it's like when it comes to social media, I might want to share something, but then I also have compassion, like I don't want to make also people feel bad. And I think the more of that compassion we can bring into the message is, you know, and navigate how we're telling people things, I think that that might be part of what's missing, is our connection with other humans too, especially that might not be at the same level of consciousness for us as
mhm.
us.
And I think your concern with that is very, very real. I think there's the other side of the coin is share as much as possible, show as much content as possible,
Mm-hmm,
because you don't know the truth. We got to get people to this new level of consciousness. Yeah, that's real, but they're only going to do it when they're ready.
mm-hmm,
And how do we create that space,
mm-hmm,
enable folks to be ready? And then there's another layer. I'm doing this on my own. And that's where it unravels to where, you lose that sense of belonging, connection. Um, I've been, to put this in a greater context, um, I've been volunteering with an organization called Pro Animal Future out here in the Denver area, since they originated last spring in 2023. And you might have heard we had two ballot measures in Denver, one to ban slaughterhouses, and the other was to ban fur products.
Mm-hmm.
And previous to this work with Pro Animal Future, Pax Fauna, its sister organization, engaged in some very critical research. And one that came out of it was some findings on how, we develop this sense of futility if we're going at things alone, essentially. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we can evolve together, and that's been the underlying core work of the ballot measures, use voting as an act to move away from animal suffering, to move away from environmental injustices and worker injustices, community injustices. And so, if we can engage through these people centered opportunities through
Mm-hmm.
voting, you're not alone in all this. And so, that's what it really boils down to, like we talked about with community. If folks perceive, or they really are in a situation where no one is on their side, not family or friends, there's no online space where we can go to,
Mm-hmm.
then things become really challenging. And so I think, politically, this is a fantastic shift. But this idea that we're evolving away from the use of industrialized agriculture, we're evolving away together, is monumental, and it has applications across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And so for those who may not have community, there's plenty of opportunities to join others. Meetup.com has some fantastic online spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to mention In Defense of Animals has a fantastic animal activism support group. So I highly recommend looking into their support group. They meet online.
I'm going to
And
write
all of
those
this is,
down and link them for us afterwards.
yeah,
What were they again, if you don't mind?
In Defense of Animals has a activism support group, and they meet once a month. This information is found on connectforanimals.com.
Okay.
Connectforanimals.com is fantastic. They're linking events online and in person all around the world.
That's
So
amazing.
Connect for Animals is kind of the go-to. And that's where you can find the information about the support groups and countless other um, opportunities. So
What would be how we could also find you in as well. You have your link tree, I think you gave me, right? So we link that in the description if we wanted to know more about everything that you're doing.
yeah, the link tree would be wonderful. I also offer a um, activist and animal caregiver support group once a month through the Compassion Consortium.
Okay.
And so that's another opportunity where folks can, engage with other like-minded individuals. And the Compassion Consortium has wonderful opportunities. If folks are interested in the animal chaplaincy training, if they're interested in finding a spiritual home with other like-minded individuals, they have a beautiful Sunday service where they bring in animals virtually into the space and have some very meaningful discussions with their guest speakers. Anything from interspecies spiritual practices. And then once a month, they also have engaged member practices. So I found the Compassion Consortium to be, frankly, a way to help lift me away from the symptoms of burnout that
Mm-hmm.
I experienced a few times over the years. And I did burn out a few times. Um, I recognized how to strengthen my awareness and put up some boundaries
Mm-hmm.
that I really needed in my life when I would pile so many things onto my plate, in addition to having a full time teaching job.
Right.
I realized this is not going to keep me going in the long run.
Yeah.
So, what is my journey moving forward? What am I being called to do? Sometimes that takes some time
Mm-hmm.
to come to an understanding of, and that's perfectly fine. So, yeah, so many
What,
pieces.
what would you recommend, or like what inspired you about that, like to people who are feeling a little bit burnt out, because there's so many aspects of this that I think we forget, especially when it comes to like seeing the world around us. Like I can feel so good when I leave like a community um, meeting, or like something like this where we're talking about all the progress, and then like you go back into your regular world, and then you feel like something else has to be done. I need to put something else out. I need to go to another, maybe activists, finding all the events, or it's like,
Mhm.
I know people have this sense of urgency, but I think also that we're needed in so many ways as activists. What would you say would be a piece of advice, like for people just take a step back for a minute, or find something and focus on it, like as far as how you found that organization help you?
Um, Speaking to my personal experience, giving myself permission to take time for myself
Mm-hmm.
and to grow love for myself was very key, because I came to a profound realization after a friend told me time and time again, I don't know how you're going to continue doing all this when you're not giving yourself that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we use the word self care, self love, and there is deep meaning to that. But it comes back to giving ourselves permission, and first having the awareness of when we are striving, when we feel and continue to be on the go.
Mm-hmm.
And really coming to that realization was what allowed me um, to incorporate spiritual practices into my life, to remind myself through self talk, which is again, the research shows it's very powerful to support activists who are experiencing burnout and compassion fatigue, to just talk themselves through, everything is okay in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I am fine, and
Mm-hmm.
to relax. It is okay to take a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I would say beyond that, again, coming back to community, finding what else has worked for folks, um, going to those activism support groups
Mm-hmm.
and being heard is really critical as well, because we may have um, these thoughts just sitting in our minds, and no one's really understanding what we're going through, or very few people. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have those connections. We don't have the folks who get it.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to meet that need for understanding. And so again, um, finding that space wherever it may be is, I think, very critical. And beyond that, we might be looking at, some longer term work. It may become more of a journey, and it can really turn into a balance and setting boundaries, really, to
Mm-hmm.
keep us going in the long run, because we do need folks doing this in the very, very long run,
Mm-hmm.
year
Yep.
after year after year. And so, yeah, that ultimately means giving ourselves permission and care in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and setting aside things to do. That act of non striving is very crucial. So,
That makes a lot of sense, because yeah, you're right. If we all, maybe you have 2 months of really good activism and you're burnt out and you're feeling, kind of like you've done too much, or you're not taking care of yourself, or you're, emotionally drained from it, then you stop. That's not helping anyone, like you said, in the long run. I think that was a really good statement you made there, because we need the long run. We need longevity, consistency, to keep it out there, because it, if we don't want everyone burnt out on it, for sure. And um, just the consistency of where we're going as a movement. It seems sometimes like nothing's changing, but then you can look at things. It's how you perceive it. I do see things at least starting to shift. Like you definitely are seeing more animal product alternatives out there, you know, these little baby steps where they're not major. There's people talking about the environment and the effects of animal agriculture. There's people actually discussing this on a more of a mainstream scale. We haven't gotten the compassion part of it, I feel like, you know, based on the whole industry and the way that money kind of still controls a lot of things. But with all of us collectively doing a little bit, and you know, organizations like yours and you helping people make connections and helping you know, connect that bridge, and sanctuaries, like we can look at things in two different ways: as the glass half full or half empty. And I think that helps me mentally too, to try to reflect on some positives that I've seen, you know, within this world, and that can help us build momentum on it too, rather than thinking everything is kind of doomed, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Finding the stories that bring us joy and gratitude are really crucial. There's
Mhm.
a really great website called Good News Network. I think that's what it's called, something of that nature.
Okay.
We can find um, the media that's not going to bring us down,
Hmm.
because that's really tough. And I moved away from local and mainstream media many years ago, and I found that has helped me sustain my work as well.
Yeah.
Um, Spending very little time on social media, frankly, has helped me also sustain this work. And yeah, exactly, because you know, when we're just bombarded with things that are bringing us down, lowering our energy, you know, we need to find these ways to elevate our energy.
And that's, I think, one of the things I want to bring to this platform is, let's hear people's story of how they changed their health with a plant-based diet, if that
Mhm.
connects with someone. Let's hear this beautiful story about the sanctuary and the animal, you know, and your knowledge and how we can bridge the gap with people. Let's hear this person's journey. You know, I think putting those stories out there not only helps hopefully the audience, but it definitely helps me feel a lot better about everything going on too. And seeing that, you know, and putting that in our, I feel like we all live on an algorithm. And so we're going to, you know, be able to bring into our life as much as we want to. And that boundaries thing was so true. Like, if we don't want to see it, just don't turn it on, right? Like, don't turn the news on, right? Sometimes obviously we have to have
Mhm.
a minimal amount of knowledge in the world we live in, but we sometimes can inundate ourselves with negativity without even realizing it.
Definitely. And you know, there's some wonderful opportunities I've had. Speaking of, I mean, folks who are going for the long run and folks who have been doing this work decade after decade. I think of folks like, you know, Will Tuttle, Victoria Moran,
Mm-hmm.
um, folks who, you know, have kept that level of self care
Mm-hmm.
at the next level. And I really have come to realize that is also very crucial.
Mm-hmm.
You know, eating very healthy, whole foods, plant based,
Mm-hmm.
regular exercise, mindfulness practices, you know, giving ourselves time to play and have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because I look to, you know, the wisdom of Lisa Kemmerer also comes to mind. You know, so many folks who have just given me little golden pieces to
Mm-hmm.
sit with, not going back to the graphic content. You know, I don't need to watch Dominion. I don't need to look at that and sink myself deeper.
Yeah.
I already know what's happening.
Yes.
Layer on more trauma, definitely not is going, that's the opposite direction of where I'm going at this
Yes.
point.
It's like we
So,
already know, right? We don't need to, you know, continue to um I don't need any other motivation, let's put it that way, to fight for animals. I've already got it in me, you know. So I agree with you. Like, I just, if I even see something, I'm just like quickly scrolling by it. I don't like really being on
mhm,
a lot of pages. Like, I think it's great for the purpose that it's there for, maybe to show someone that shock value. But you're right, me personally, I can't, focus on that because it definitely, it hurts me too much. Frankly, I don't want to keep looking at
Mhm.
something that I already don't want to see. That's a really good point, because I think we can get caught up in that. Look at this. See, this is why I do it. See, this is why I do it. It's like, I don't want to be in that, in that ballpark at all. You're right. So thanks for sharing that with those who might still be, feeling kind of sad or negative, or I think it can definitely slow our momentum in trying to do what we really need to do, is just create that change and that shift and that connection. You're right. Um, I know we're coming up probably on our time limit here. I don't want to, I know you have lots of things going on, but just as a, like, kind of wrapping things up, is there any like message that you would like to put out there from, or anything else, any ways we can find you, or like any last message that you could give, like, or your wisdom? You've just given me so much to think about. I always go back and rewatch these and find these little gems within, and I feel like you definitely helped me to kind of take a deep breath and realize that, when I talk about giving other people space, maybe sometimes I need that too.
Mm, yeah. I'm so grateful for everyone who um, has joined us here today. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for inviting me on. And just to end with, give yourself that love, give yourself that time. We are all connected, just like you mentioned before, we are all animals. And so when we give ourselves that love, others are picking up on it too. We're not the only ones benefiting. So that rest, that space is also benefiting others who we might be working tirelessly for. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of your knowledge, for what you do for animals, for what you do for people. And I know I'll definitely be checking out all of the links. And everyone, please check out the links in the description. And we'll link the organizations that she mentioned too in there. And also, I definitely will be in touch with you. I know you're not, like you said, you don't go on social media that much, but I will be in touch, at least, via email and everything. Feel free to come back anytime you have anything you want to talk about or promote. And, thank you. I think, let's see. Oh, Mona, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. Yeah, it is a really hard time of the year. So I
Yeah,
think we all needed to hear this. Definitely. It's one of the most challenging times for a lot of us, um, that we're met with the real world, as we say. Not that we're not living in the real world. Maybe I said that wrong, but anyway, that we realize how it's a compassionate time of year for a lot of people, and then like we can see it in a different way too, because of, we can see also how much we don't feel the compassion for animals this time of year, unfortunately.
exactly. Yeah.
Thank you, Mona, for being here, and everyone else watching, leave us a comment. And thank you, Alaina. I really, really appreciate you, and I'm grateful for you.
I'm grateful for you as well. Thank you so much. Look forward to chatting in the future.
Definitely. Thank you. And thank you, Marakita, if you're watching, for referring Alaina to me. You're amazing, and I appreciate you too. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.